The sharp clatter of lockers slamming shut echoed through the school hallways, drowning out the chatter of students racing to their next class. Laughter rippled through the corridors like an electric current, fleeting and loud, but then there was silence. Behind the closed doors of the old music room, a figure sat alone, hunched and still. Mr. Thompson, the school janitor, was invisible to them all. His hands, thick with age and calloused by years of hard labor, gripped the broom tightly as he swept the floor. The fraying edges of his work shirt and the faded jeans spoke volumes of a life lived unnoticed, a man who had been forgotten by the world. The students rushed past him every day without a second glance, as if he were merely part of the scenery. No one stopped to wonder who he really was, what stories he carried beneath the surface, or what his past might reveal. They didn't know, they couldn't know. But as the chatter from the hallway faded into the background, a sense of foreboding lingered in the air. Something was about to change. Today would be different. Trevor, a senior with a sharp tongue and a cruel streak, had always seen Mr. Thompson as an easy target. It started with the whispers, the teasing jabs about the janitor's age and the dirt under his fingernails. It was all in good fun, Trevor had thought, just harmless banter. But today, the atmosphere felt different, more charged, as if something darker was stirring beneath the surface. "Hey, old man," Trevor called out, his voice cutting through the hum of the school. A few of his friends snickered behind him, egging him on. They saw the janitor as nothing more than a figure of ridicule, a man to laugh at, not with. Mr. Thompson's shoulders tensed, but he didn't respond. He never did. Years of ridicule had hardened him in ways they could never understand. He let it roll off him, just like he had for all these years. But today, Trevor wasn't done. With a practiced flick of his wrist, Trevor tossed a crumpled piece of paper at Mr. Thompson. It landed with a soft thud against the janitor's shoulder. Laughter rippled through the group of students, the sound sharp and jarring in the quiet of the hallway. "Hey, clean that up, old man," Trevor mocked, his voice dripping with malice. "You're good for nothing but sweeping up after us." Mr. Thompson's hands paused mid-sweep, the broom trembling ever so slightly in his grip. The mocking laughter echoed in his ears, each cruel word carving deeper into him, unraveling something fragile inside. His breath hitched. It was the final straw. Without a word, he turned slowly, his back now facing the group of students. The ringing of the school bell echoed down the hallway, signaling the end of the class period. Students surged into the hall, oblivious to the storm that was about to unfold. Mr. Thompson's gaze remained fixed on the floor. His pulse raced, but he stayed quiet. For so many years he had hidden in the background, enduring the cruel taunts with a forced smile, keeping his secrets locked away from the world. But today would be different. With slow, deliberate movements, he shuffled toward the door of the music room, his shoes scraping against the linoleum floor. The door creaked open, and the dimly lit room stood before him, a space that had always held memories of his past. It was here, so many years ago, that his talent had been recognized, where he had once been celebrated for his musical genius. But that was before life had pulled him into the shadows. The room smelled of dust and age, the air thick with the weight of forgotten dreams. Mr. Thompson hesitated for a moment, his hand resting on the doorframe, his breath shallow. The silence around him was almost suffocating, but it wasn't just the quiet of the room. It was the silence of years gone by, years of abandonment. The piano stood in the corner, untouched and waiting. It was an old grand piano, its polished wood faded with time. He hadn't played it in years. The memories of those days of performing in grand concert halls, of being surrounded by music and admiration, felt like a distant dream. He had locked that part of himself away, afraid to let anyone see the man he used to be. But now something had shifted. Mr. Thompson took a step toward the piano, his fingers trembling slightly as he reached out to touch the cool ivory keys. He sat down, the bench creaking under his weight, and placed his hands gently on the keys. The world outside the music room seemed to disappear as he closed his eyes, the weight of years of silence pressing down on him. Then he played. The first note rang out, a single, soft sound that cut through the silence like a thread of light breaking through darkness. It was haunting, familiar. The music was slow at first, delicate, like a whisper from the past. But as his fingers moved across the keys, the music grew bolder, more confident. A powerful, beautiful melody that seemed to swell with every passing moment. It was as if the piano had come alive under his touch, each note spilling out with a raw emotion that he had kept hidden for so long. The music filled the room, filling the cracks in the air with its warmth. But what happened next would shock everyone watching. Trevor, along with a few of his friends, had wandered past the music room on their way to class, their voices still loud and carefree. But then they heard it. The music. Trevor stopped in his tracks, his hand still on the door handle. He turned to his friends, the look on his face one of disbelief. "What is that?" he muttered. The melody was too beautiful to ignore, too powerful to be dismissed. It was a sound that seemed to reach deep inside of them, pulling them into the room without a word. Slowly, one by one, the students gathered outside the door, their curiosity piqued. Trevor was the first to step inside, the others following hesitantly, And there, sitting at the piano, was Mr. Thompson, his fingers dancing across the keys with an elegance and passion they had never seen before. The sight was enough to stop them all in their tracks. Trevor's usual smirk faltered, replaced by an expression of awe. His friends, once laughing, now stood speechless. The janitor, the man they had mocked for so long, was playing with the skill of a virtuoso, but as the music played, something in Trevor stirred. A gnawing sense of guilt, and yet what had caused Mr. Thompson to show this side of himself now? What was happening to the man who had once seemed so ordinary? The music grew louder, reaching its crescendo, and for the first time in his life, Trevor felt something he had never felt before, a deep sense of shame. But before any of them could speak, the last note hung in the air, suspended in time, as if the room itself was holding its breath. What happens next? What has Mr. Thompson awakened within himself and within them? The soft hum of students' voices in the hallway faded into the distance, leaving only the faint sound of footsteps echoing off the walls. But there was something else, a sound, almost imperceptible at first, that seemed to hang in the air, filling the space with an otherworldly quality. It was a melody, haunting and delicate, rising from the depths of the old music room like a whisper from another time. The sound was so beautiful, so raw, that it pierced through the usual noise of the school. A few students, distracted by the unfamiliar note, paused and looked at each other, unsure if they were hearing things. But as the music grew louder, clearer, it became impossible to ignore. The notes seemed to pull them in, like a magnetic force, and slowly, one by one, a small group of students gathered outside the music room, drawn by the haunting song that filled the air. It wasn't long before Trevor, a senior with an arrogance that matched his popularity, led the group of onlookers. His usual swagger was gone, replaced by an undeniable curiosity that tugged at him, even though a part of him didn't want to acknowledge it. He was the one who had always mocked Mr. Thompson, the janitor, the man who everyone else had dismissed as just another invisible background fixture. And yet, now here he was, hearing a sound that shook him to his core. "Who's playing?" Trevor muttered, his voice low, his usual bravado stripped away by the sheer beauty of the music. The students around him shuffled, unsure whether to open the door or remain standing in the hallway. It was a moment of hesitation, a pause in time before Trevor, driven by a mix of guilt and curiosity, pushed the door open just a crack. What he saw inside stopped him in his tracks. Mr. Thompson, the quiet janitor, was sitting at the grand piano, his frail hands moving across the keys with a fluidity that felt almost unreal. His fingers danced, each note coming alive under his touch. It was as if he was no longer the janitor they had all mocked, but a maestro, an artist playing the very soul of the music. The melody swelled, a symphony of emotion, rich with layers of sadness, joy, and longing. The room itself seemed to come alive with the music, the walls reverberating with the sound of a past long forgotten. The students, Trevor included, stood frozen, their gazes fixed on the man they had always dismissed as insignificant. And yet, here he was, a hidden genius, weaving a story with every note that seemed to rise from the depths of his soul. As the music built, the students were caught in its grip. The haunting symphony was unlike anything they had ever heard, its richness piercing through their hearts. They couldn't look away. Trevor's mind raced, his chest tightening as the weight of what he was witnessing settled in. He had mocked Mr. Thompson, made fun of him, laughed at his appearance and his silence. But now, as the old man played, Trevor saw him in a new light, a light that revealed a depth he hadn't known existed. The music reached its peak, a crescendo of sound that filled every corner of the room. And then, with a final aching note, it fell into silence. The air in the room seemed to hold its breath. The students, their emotions raw and unspoken, stood still. Mr. Thompson's hands rested gently on the piano keys, his gaze distant, as though the music had taken him somewhere far beyond the confines of the school. For a long moment, there was only silence. The students didn't speak, too overwhelmed to find words. Trevor, his face pale, felt a heavy weight in his chest. The arrogance he had once worn so proudly now felt like a distant memory, replaced by an undeniable guilt. And then, with a simple movement, Mr. Thompson stood. His hands trembled slightly as he wiped a tear from his eye, one that had escaped down his weathered cheek. He didn't look at the students, didn't acknowledge them as he slowly stood up from the piano bench. His movements were quiet, deliberate, and yet there was a strength in them that none of the students had expected. Without a word, Mr. Thompson turned and walked toward the door. His shoulders were straight, his back unwavering. He left the room as silently as he had entered, leaving the group of students standing there in stunned silence. The door closed softly behind him, leaving them in the oppressive quiet that followed. Trevor felt something shift inside of him. The weight of his own actions, the cruelty he had directed toward this man, now seemed so small, so trivial. The music had done something to him, something that words never could. It had exposed him to a part of himself he didn't want to see, the part of him that had taken pleasure in mocking someone so undeserving. And yet, as the final echo of Mr. Thompson's playing faded from the room, Trevor realized something even more powerful. Mr. Thompson had never needed to seek revenge, to humiliate anyone. He had not played to prove anything to them. No, the lesson was far deeper than that. In that moment, it wasn't just the music that left an impression, it was the dignity with which Mr. Thompson had carried himself. He had not lashed out at the students, nor had he given in to the temptation to make them feel small in return. Instead, he had chosen to show them who he truly was in the most humble of ways. Through his music, he had opened their eyes to the strength of his quiet resilience. Trevor took a tentative step forward, unsure of what to say, but the words caught in his throat. I'm sorry, he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. But Mr. Thompson was already gone, his back turned, leaving Trevor with nothing but the weight of his guilt. The other students began to leave the room, each of them carrying the same stunned silence. As Trevor followed them out, his mind raced. He had witnessed something far more powerful than he could have ever imagined, something that had changed him forever. Mr. Thompson, the janitor, had given them a lesson in humanity, one they would never forget. The music that had once seemed so foreign to them now echoed in their minds, a constant reminder of the hidden depths within those they least expected. And Trevor? Trevor was left to wonder, as he walked down the hallway, how many other hidden geniuses lay unnoticed in the world. But the true impact of that moment hadn't yet fully unfolded. What was the real story behind Mr. Thompson's silence? And what did it mean for the students who had been lucky enough to witness it? The answers, it seemed, were only just beginning to reveal themselves. If you like this story, please like this video and subscribe our channel for more interesting stories.